Arise, cry out in the night as the watches of the night begin. Pour out your heart like water in the presence of the Lord. This is episode 11 of Summer in Process, and together we gather.
Shut up and sit down.
Gotta get the clicky buttons right. Enjoy.
Sweet. All right. Well, Jesus has gathered us again. Here we are. Oh, you're supposed to do something else. I was going to keep going with that.
Oh.
All right. And we're in process. So we did a lot of high, conceptual. It's not just conceptual. It's true. It's real. It's not just ideal. It's not just abstract. It's actual reality. But it is a different reality than a lot of people are aware of.
Yeah.
But so.
All the conjunctions.
What are you saying?
I said all the conjunctions.
All the conjunctions. This is the conjunction episode. Episode 11. Anyway, let's get kind of into what was your awakening. Okay. Let's talk about awakening, because we got a broad overview of why people do what they do and why we have done what we do and why you were doing what you were doing, specifically in college. And we could go into a lot of the ways of what you were doing, but I'm not sure that that's super fruitful. I think that'll come along with this conversation.
Yeah.
People will pick up on some of the ways that you were living a double standard or creating your own freedom that actually ended up being cagey, but then actually God used it for the good to actually free you. Yeah. That's what, that awakening thing. And so. Yeah.
And there was I would say there was a culmination of 3 different things that kind of all collided to create the awakening. As I was kind of processing it was my academics, the guy I was dating, and the way I was living with toxins, so drugs and food and alcohol. And as a culmination, it all kind of came together in a pretty crazy way to create this awakening for me. Because God was working on me, and I was understanding the convolutedness of all of the things I was doing. And I was, before he really awakened me, I was actually understanding and starting to change those things. But it was on my behavior, it was a slow process, and it was my standard. It was what I wanted to
Your
create
effort.
with it. My effort. Yeah. So I would weed those things out for behavioralistic reasons, knowing that Jesus would want me to do that. But it was still me. I was still keeping the things I wanted to do that weren't necessarily correlating with the lifestyle Jesus would be wanting me to live.
It wasn't a holistic submission to a holy and living God who loves you, redeemed you. You can put your life in his hands. It was you knowing that you disobeying this holy and loving God, because you wouldn't have not called him a holy and loving God because you still believe that he was, but it was you attempting to please him, and then also keep your way and introduce a bit of his way, so that your way wasn't quite as damaging, but really keep your way as well. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, and try and get the benefits of all of the things and get all these different, which obviously doesn't work, but
no,
I was
not in the
I
long
was
run.
trying to.
We can try to fool ourselves for a while. I did for 18 years. I tried to do both.
Mine lasted 2 weeks, but
Well, and then to some degree, God is still showing me how I still have those things, those moments, but they're not as life consuming as what I was doing for those 18 years or whatever. But so Yeah, that's interesting. So I thought this could be for another episode, but I thought it was fascinating that you threw food in there with the toxins. And so that's a little bit of a what?
Yeah.
But, and we can hit that another day. But, so that's interesting that that the way you culminated those three things that kind of like, so would you say that was God giving you over with those things?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I
He was
felt like
allowing you the freedom to choose it.
Yes, he was
And
giving
he was
me
starting to
over.
reveal himself.
Right.
Because you had read Gospel Fluency or not? No, you hadn't.
I
But I had started talking to you about the
read
gospel.
some of it.
Yeah.
But I hadn't read. I actually had the guy I was dating read it.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
Yeah, I didn't read it. He did.
Yeah.
And then we talked about it.
So just real quick, because you kind of felt like you didn't need it, you were good without it. I was having conversations, and you conceptually were getting what I was saying, which did bring you some freedom.
Yes.
Right?
I felt like I didn't want to be convicted by it. Which didn't work by making him read it, because then I felt even more convicted by it.
Because he called you out on stuff,
yeah, he was
right?
like, bro, you're not doing any of this. And I was like...
Oh, wow.
I was like, okay, you're right. Well, yeah, and so, I mean, he wasn't... I don't know if he was necessarily, like, gung-ho on... From the circumstances, I don't think he was, like, ready to do it either. But he was very clear on, like, Summer, you're not actually doing this.
Yeah.
And so obviously my plan didn't work. I didn't, like, wasn't able to, like, calculate it all and, like, convict the right people and, like, make it work to, like, what I wanted to do.
You weren't in control.
I wasn't in control.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that obviously showed with what happened. But, yeah, so I didn't want to feel convicted by it, and that's part of the reason I stopped, like, talking to you and Mom as much, having conversations with you guys and stuff like that. Moved more towards having conversations with people who were, in my same space.
Yeah. More accommodating to your duplicity.
Yeah.
Which is,
and at the time it actually was some of my siblings too, so that felt okay. Like I would talk to my sister a lot, and so then it felt okay. Like, oh, okay, we're in the same boat. We came from the same family, but we're like kind of doing the same things, so it's fine.
Yeah. And in that way, it was fine, and you were both working through things.
We were, yeah.
Yeah,
and we were in very different places too. Like, like. And so that was interesting.
Yeah.
And we'd also struggled with very different things.
Yeah.
And so it was, there's a lot of backstory, but definitely all of those things.
So, well, I kind of lost track of what I was going to say.
That's okay.
But, a little interlude here, entertainment. So as you were saying all those things, what baffles me, I'm in process. I'm literally right now in process, still trying to, like, totally wrap my head around. You were the reason why you withdrew from Mom and I is so hard for me to wrap my head around, because I feel like I did the Christianity behavioral thing forever, for so long. And then, like, when I heard the gospel, like, it freed me, and I could apply it to all of my life and just become free and powerful in Christ. That's what I've been looking for so long. I just ran in it. Just like, I literally was just like, I want God, help me to apply this to everything and help me to apply to everyone. Like, this is the best. And, like, because, like, I believed that Christianity was the best and that God was the best for a really long time, but I was getting annihilated. And I was such a defeated Christian, for so much of it. And so then I was very strong on Christian behavior. I knew the scriptures really well. And, like, I was really, like, but I didn't have the victory. I didn't have the freedom and the power to just, like, walk away from all those things that have been keeping me down.
So here's something interesting.
So just real quick.
Okay.
Can you remember it?
Yes.
Okay. So
no promises.
So as I was having those conversations with you and you would move away, I'm like, what are you moving away from? This is the gospel. This is the freedom that you're actually looking for. I'm not condemning you. I'm actually telling you that you're not condemned, that like you're justified based on Jesus, not on yourself, but you weren't believing that yet. And so like, even though you were receiving it in concept and you're saying, oh, I like that, I can start kind of like looking at that and applying it, and I want other people to have it. You yourself weren't accepting that yet. True? And so then the more I would share it, you were actually rejecting it, even though you felt like you were receiving it, right? Your heart wasn't receiving it. And so like, the more I would talk to you about it, the more excited I got about it, the more you're like, yeah, I see how good that is. And then you would go the other way. And it would be longer before I'd have a conversation with you. And I'm like, what is going on? And I feel like I'm in that space with a lot of people, even now. And like, I'm like, where are you going? Like, this is the best news, but they're not receiving the best news. And instead they're walking in self-condemnation because their heart hasn't moved to it yet. It hasn't accepted it. And that's their process. And so I have to let those people go away. And with you, I had to kind of like let you go away, but I was very confused by it.
Yeah.
I guess I just wanted to share, that.
Yeah. I think too, I left right about when you were probably starting to understand all of that. And so I didn't see that change actually in the home necessarily as much as maybe some of my siblings did.
Yeah.
And so like that, I guess, so that like, so that like,
violence isn't the answer.
Oh, you just made me lose my train of thought.
I know, and I also want to ask, like, when I said, "Oh wait, can you hold it? Let me finish this."
Yeah.
Like, is that where you're heading?
Yes.
Okay.
Sort of. Yeah. It changed, but yeah, that's fine.
Go with it.
So if I can remember now what I was saying.
Well, you were going on kind of how you were getting conceptually.
Oh yes.
The guy in your life, you had him read the book.
Yep. So, but what I was saying about when I left the home, you hadn't necessarily like fully understood the gospel of the freedom yet.
I was working it out.
You were still, I think you had started to hear it. But when I say like, when I felt like I had like started getting independence, like left the home kind of thing, I would say I felt like I had done that when I started working because I was gone all the time and I started living kind of my own life, even though I was living at home. And so that's really actually like right about the time where you started understanding all these concepts.
Yep.
And so I had, at that point, that was my point of like starting to disconnect myself independent, at that point. And so by the time I was at college, I hadn't seen a lot of that growth in you. And I hadn't seen necessarily what it did. And I still remembered a lot of that, like behavioralism and stuff like that, which I had really fully embraced, whereas some of my brother and sister hadn't embraced that. And so then I didn't see I wasn't really seeing the freedom of it. I was just seeing like, oh, it's a new thing. Oh, it's different. Oh, it's a new discovery, blah, blah, blah. I didn't see the power of it, I guess.
Because you'd grown up with a lot of my discoveries.
Right.
I discovered a lot.
You did.
Because I was subjecting myself to Christianity, scripture reading.
Yeah, and there was freedom in
messages.
those things.
Yeah, I had moments of freedom, and so did the family. We were blessed by it, for sure. But, yeah. I hadn't really gotten to a place where, and I remember a very specific moment where I was like, the boys are going to get this. And really, Lana was really on her way out, and you were already out. And I was just like, God, give me an opportunity to like walk beside Summer and Alana a bit in this. Not really totally understanding like how that was going to play out, but I'm grateful for it. You know, that whole be careful for what you pray for, that's so ridiculous. You don't know who you're praying to if you say something like that. I know. You must think God is like a
warty finger, just like,
totally.
You be careful. That's what that reminds me.
I love it. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And so, so going all the way back, you you're getting some of this. You want it for this guy that you're relationally connected to and tied in with. And you have a group of friends. Like, where are you at? Like, take us to that space.
Yeah. So, well, it was kind of changing. So like each semester was like sort of different for me, I would say. So I had technically like 2 full semesters, 1 like half semester. So the first semester I was really just like doing a lot of fitting in. And so I didn't create like a lot of connections. I did meet the guy I ended up dating for most of the time, but I did date like 2 other guys, I think, at that point. And so, but I was like connecting more with my roommates, less with like my group of friends from my actual degree, all those kinds of things. So that was kind of first semester. First semester was like, I don't know, I didn't do super well in school. I was like I said before, I was getting like C's and D's, maybe like a B in here, there, or whatever. And I just like wasn't putting in a lot of effort. And I was not necessarily thinking I could. I thought I was like academically like incapable of getting A's, which obviously wasn't true, because then the next semester I was super on top of it. I had created a group of friends where I really loved what was going on. I was close with my roommate still, but I also had like started to hang out with a lot of people in my degree. I was in a lot of ways dating a guy that was like really great standard for like where I was at. And then I left to go to summer camp, and I worked there all summer. So again, I didn't go back home. And that like was crazy, because I started really struggling with my relationship with the guy. I felt like a lot of freedom in my personality that I hadn't necessarily even felt in college before. Like I was like felt super intelligent with the people I was around, and like the conversations we were having, and like I felt like I was developing myself like super well. Yet this relationship with this guy was like totally going down the drain. And then I was also going to be an RA at school. I was going to start stepping up, being more of a leader in some of the other things I was in, and was able to like start really pressing forward in my degree and stuff as well. And so then coming into that last semester, I felt like I was like having all this empowerment. I ended up starting the relationship with the guy, like just like starting fresh, like we're gonna do this, whatever. I was doing well in school again. I was an RA, so I was a leader in a lot of ways, which I felt was like a really big, good development for my own personality. And I also
again, it was.
Yeah, totally.
Right. Yeah.
I was doing a lot of awesome things in my program. I was leading a lot of things. My teacher, who I felt didn't like me my first semester in college, like we were like really close.
Shout out to that teacher.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, thanks for being buddies with me. And so I felt like I was becoming favorable for a lot of the faculty as well.
Yeah, because they came beside you in some pretty incredible ways.
Yeah, and I was close. I was overall close with like almost all the faculty. Like all the homework student help faculty I was really pretty close with. I was close with like the cafeteria faculty. I worked there. And I was working like 2 jobs as well. So I felt like I was being successful in making income too, because first semester I literally had gotten off trail and was like $100 in debt. And so like I was like, oh, awesome, going into school with debt already. Yeah. And then I was close with like teacher faculty. So all these things, like I had felt like a lot of my personality was like really coming out in the way I felt was like successful and like I was doing well. But I still had this part of me that knew like, and I might have talked about this before in previous podcasts, but like my sophomore year, I had made this like decision, like no matter what happens, I'm going to choose Jesus eventually. Like I know I am. Like I know that's my path. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know when it'll happen, but I just knew. I was like, I'm not going to live a lifestyle not with Jesus forever. Like I'm just not going to do that. And I still had that mentality in school. Like, this is just a time. This is just a space. There'll be a time where I choose Jesus. It's not now. This is what I want to do now. He was preparing me, obviously, in that thought process. And so then I had that in the back of my head as I was being super successful in like every form that I had wanted to be. So I was like just killing it in everything, to me anyway. But except for with Jesus. And so then I was like, okay, I need to work on this now. And that started at the beginning of my third semester. So I really felt like I was established in all of those other things, specifically in independence as well. Like, I felt like I was like, okay, I'm my own person at this point. Like, I've broken away from home life. I mean, obviously to a degree, but
in a way that God has designed kids to do it. And so it's not like you're not seen in a rebellious way.
No, I just
way.
become independent.
Yeah. That's a good thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so, and I knew that I wasn't, and I had actually, I feel like I had overcome that like weird, like I need to like break away from my family. Like I need to be my own person. Now it's just like, I love my family. I'm not like living with them. I plan on being my own person at this point, still making connections with them, still loving them, but just not living with them. Or, you know,
attached or
dependent.
Whatever.
Dependent. All good words. And so then, as I would say, like a month into the semester, I decided to just like stop doing a lot of things behaviorally I knew Jesus wanted me to stop doing. So I stopped drinking, I stopped smoking tobacco and weed. I stopped having sex. I stopped, decided to start eating healthier. I was doing a lot more like healthy activity, like building up of friends and stuff like that, instead of like doing a lot of like the degrading kind of joking around that I used to do all the time. And so I wanted to like move into that like healthy place with Jesus too. And that was like, that lasted that lasted about 2.5 weeks. And then I started feeling super sick, and I was really confused because I had just quit all of these things. And well, actually I had started feeling a little bit sick when I had decided to quit everything, but I decided to quit all these things. And then 2 weeks in, I was feeling pretty sick and realized I was late for my period. And I had this idea, the guy I was with, he was like, you're pregnant. He was like convinced I was pregnant. And I still in my head was just totally like, no way I'm not. I mean, I had every pregnancy symptoms in the book, like every classic one. And I was just like, there's no way I'm pregnant. Like, no way. And I was just like in full denial of the fact of like these super obvious signs.
Do you think there's some fear denial, or like what was
for sure. It was,
or like not now, I just started changing.
There was a little bit of that. So
like what was happening?
So there's a little bit of like several things, like like I just started changing, like oh, thanks Jesus, like
totally.
Yeah, that's a good, like I started doing things for you finally, and like you're oh, you might be pregnant, and I'm like awesome. So there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of fear,
which summarizes the fruit of behavioral transactional relationship with God.
Yeah. Which I was super in at the time.
Yeah.
And so I forgot what I was saying.
So your boyfriend was like, I think you're pregnant.
Oh,
and you're in denial. And
and I was just in denial. I was fearful. I was a little bit, but I was also just like, there's no way. Like that just can't happen right now.
Not happening.
Yeah, like my life just like literally these are probably things I processed. Like I just don't have time to be pregnant right now. This is such a bad time for me to be pregnant. Like God wouldn't do that to me. Like I wouldn't that wouldn't be something that would happen. Which, not to get into it, but I was not preventing pregnancy at all. And so obviously I was not processing through what was actually going on. I was just like, there's no way, I'm totally good.
Right. So you had some sort of a core belief, and we can get into this later. And as I listen to these, I'll write these ideas down, and we will hit these things again at some point in time. But there's a theology that you're believing right there, that a lot of people believe that they aren't aware of. But like, because God's good, and he wants the best for me, he would never allow anything to thwart my plans.
Totally. And I was super my personality like really digs into my plans. Like
and my plans are good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Society thinks my plans are good.
Exactly.
I think they are. I don't see why Jesus would have a problem with this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just like, what? And also like the like kind of thing I had concluded about the guy I was with, like the game plan of like how I was going to stay with him and we were going to like find Jesus together and like all of these things. Yeah. It was like, if I get pregnant, that's just going to like blow everything up. Like I can't coordinate all of this if I'm pregnant. Like that doesn't work. Plus I started getting sick. So back to the time where I figured I was pregnant. When I found that out, obviously I was like very, when I actually like took the test and found out I was pregnant, I was like very radically like processing like about 1 million things. And so, is our time getting close to that?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. I'll just like get a good little wrap up here. But so when I figured out that I was pregnant, it was just like a lot of things to process, obviously, for me. And Jesus was not the first thing I necessarily processed. But like within the next few days, and I don't think I told you guys until I was like 3 days after I had found out, maybe 4. After like 3 days, I realized that this was the time I was going to have to start leaning on Jesus, and I wasn't going to be able to like make all of these like things work for myself. I wasn't in control anymore. Yeah. And especially because I was getting increasingly sick very fast, and I had been asking a friend who was pregnant before me like how she was feeling, and she was sick, but she was not as sick as I was. And I was just like, I mean, it was like a Monday I was fine, I was going to work. A Friday I was like needing to go into the hospital the next day because I hadn't eaten, hadn't drank, couldn't keep anything down. Yeah. So it was a very radical awakening and very quick awakening, I guess. So that was kind of the point where everything just like turned. And there was obviously a lot of stuff going on with what happened with the guy involved and like all my friends, and like there's a lot of other details that everyone I was pleasing faculty wise, all that kind of stuff. There was a lot of stuff going on.
Which if you're up for it, I'd love to process through with you.
Totally. Yeah.
Like, because we're getting close to current now time.
Yeah.
Because you're still processing through this. I mean, you talk like everything's like you totally get it and you're away, but you're still working through things.
Like really a lot. Yeah.
And so I think that is going to be good to like get into some of that stuff.
I don't want to create
real.
There's the false idea that like I have processed through everything that's happened and I'm fine that's so BS. Like there's a lot more.
Right.
I mean, you don't just like get pregnant, leave college, leave your boyfriend of a year and all of the degree that you wanted to pursue the rest of your life and like, sweet.
Yeah.
I'm great.
Off I go.
Yeah. And
good
like
now.
maybe as enthusiastic person as I am, that may seem like that's true. And like maybe out of all people, like I could pull that image off, but like that's obviously not not true. It's not reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
I look forward to gathering again. We got to wrap it up.
Okay, cool. Feeling provoked, angered, encouraged, inspired by what you heard? Don't keep it to yourself. Comment below. Put your supportive beliefs into action by clicking all the clicky stuff. Lastly, gather with those around you and remind one another what Jesus has done, is doing, and will do. Yeah, I'll make her do the
You gotta make a noise though.
Here, wait, I'll do this.
There you go. It's all right. It's a high pitch. I'll be able to figure it out.
right, you want to go to Emma?
Yeah, go to Emma.
Okay.
Sweet.
Hi, Vivi. Hi, Vivi.
Love it. We're going to get some of all that.